What does a beginner blacksmith have to do when their cheap, soft cast iron anvil starts to look like Swiss cheese? Well, they maintain it. Welcome back to Coal and Shield Ironworks. As a beginner blacksmith, I know how you feel. It's hard to justify spending hundreds, if not thousands of dollars on a high-end anvil if you know that the hobby isn't going to pay itself off straight away. That's why I started out with the cheapest anvil I could find, and the only one I could afford. And its quality, or lack of, is really starting to show. So in today's video, I'm going to teach you how to resurface your anvil with an angle grinder with a few different discs. And we're also going to go over how to redress your hammers and a few different tools. First things first, we're going to start off with a bit of sandpaper because this will allow us to much easier see where all the high spots and the valleys are in the face of the anvil. As you can see, this will really help us see where all those low spots are. Now let's go see what discs we're going to need to fix this up. I'm going to use a few different wheels today. Now you want to start off with something that chews a lot of material off quickly, like this hard disc. And then you want to move on to these flat discs, which will really help smoothen the surface out. I found this 3-pack of full bore flat discs at my local hardware store, so it's perfect for this application. Get on there. Okay, we're back over at our anvil with our hard grinding disc. Now it's time to knock down all of the high spots until we can't see any more of those little divots in the flat face of our anvil. That didn't take long at all, probably only a few minutes. Now that all the high spots are ground out, we're going to move on to our roughest grit flap disc to smooth out any of those deep marks we made with the hard disc. Always remember to take out your battery or unplug your grinder whenever you're swapping any discs on it, because the last thing any blacksmith needs is to lose any of these bad boys. If you've been watching my other videos, you're probably thinking, this looks a lot better. Well, I hope so at least, because my wife, bless her soul, just bought me a new camera. I love you! This is just the beginning, so I'm really trying to improve my video quality for you guys, and I've also got some film lighting on the way, so hopefully that'll make it even better. But enough of that, it's time for round 2. Don't forget your PPE. That's already looking a lot better. So now we're going to move on to our next grit and then finish off with our finest grit flap disc. Just a quick lesson on why you want to gradually work up the grits instead of just going straight to the finest. If we look at the surface on a micro level, imagine these grooves are made from the 40 grit 40 grit flap wheel that we just used. The most efficient way to getting a smooth surface is by doubling the grit every pass. So after this, we want to move on to an 80 grit wheel, twice as much as the 40 obviously. So that would make our grooves half the size, and that would end up looking like this. Because we would grind down all that top layer until we reach the bottom of the groove layer again. And obviously there's still a bit of grooves there. If we went straight to a 160 or God forbid a 240 grit wheel, we would end up sitting there for ages because our grits would just be like this, would just be chewing off tiny little bits of material all the way down until we eventually reached the bottom of this 40 grit groove. And that's the reason why we step up gradually halfway each time. It's more efficient and greatly increases the life of your wheels. So what we're going to end up with, if this is our current surface that we got with our 40 grit, we're going to move up to our 80 grit, which is going to get us to about there, something like that. And then we're going to end up with even less when we move on to our 160. Actually, I think it's a 120. We've got a 120 grit. So it's not quite doubling the 80 grit, but that's not bad as long as it's not going over 160. If it's under, that just means we might have to go for a little bit longer, maybe like 2 passes instead of just 1 pass. So we're ending up from this to this. It's going to be nice and smooth. Back into it. And now we're going to move on to our finest grip. Now I'm just going to take this time to knock down any of those chips that I've made in the past on the corners of the face, the anvil. These marks on the end of the horn are pretty small, so I'm just going to quickly go over them with the fine grip. I'd say that looks ready to forge a bottle opener on. By the way, if you haven't seen my 4 previous videos, I go in depth on how to forge all the tools you're going to need to forge a traditional bottle opener, which is going to be in my next video, by the way. But for now, we're just focusing on anvil and tool maintenance. Before we move on to redressing our hammers, I just want to do one more upgrade to our anvil stand. I've noticed when I'm editing my videos that my anvil stand wobbles a lot when I'm striking with my hammer. So I'm going to try something out to try and spring load this thing to the floor. On the bottom of my anvil stand, I screwed on this piece of square plywood to help prevent it from toppling over. And to help stop the wobble, I'm going to drill a hole in all 4 corners, and I'm also going to drill a hole all the way through into the concrete with a different drill bit, obviously. And I'm going to send through these concrete coach screws that I found at my local hardware store. And I'm going to spring load it by placing this old circular saw blade right in the center. So the whole base will be lifted slightly off the ground and the corners will be held down, holding the stand tight against the floor. Oh, that ain't going nowhere. It's still a little bit of wobble, but it's better than the whole thing just bouncing around. That is 100 times better. I mean, I'm putting a lot of weight on that to move that. If I didn't spring load this anvil stand with that circular saw blade, I still might get a little bit of bounce up and down in the very center, even though it's screwed on the sides. And you could see that those screws on each corner were pulling the plywood down. So that means I may still get a little bit of wobble sideways, but I damn well am not going to be getting any bounce up and down. And you don't want any bounce, because every bit of bounce in the anvil is energy lost in each hammer blow. And one more thing, you want to drill the concrete and install each screw one by one. You don't want to drill all 4 holes and then all 4 screws, because those holes may not line up with the holes in the plywood or whatever base you're using, because as you're drilling, the stand might move a little bit and your holes may not line up. I've been meaning to do that for a while, so hopefully now my videos will be a bit easier to watch when I'm forging. On to redressing our hammers. Now, I've got 2 mallets here that I bought at a local hardware store for, I think they were like $22 each. They were originally pretty much this shape, but I smoothened them out. This one was a bit more work, this cross peen, because I had to slice through each side to get that cross peen. Because I'm poor, that's why I had to do that. 22 bucks for a mallet to turn it into a blacksmithing hammer. Pretty good, I reckon. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to chuck each one of these in my vise, just like that. And with my flat disc, I'm just going to go back and forth, left and right, until we come back to a nice smooth finish. My hammers were in pretty good condition already, so I just skipped straight to the finest flat disc I had, and it was really quick. Before we move on to redressing our punching tools, I thought now would be a good time to introduce myself. Not only to my existing followers, hey guys, but also anyone who's discovering my channel for the very first time. My name is John, and I live in this teeny tiny little country at the bottom of the world called New Zealand. I thought a lot of you might be curious because I can see in my channel analytics that the vast majority of you guys are from the States. And I apologize for my measurement taking skills. Down here we use a metric system like normal people. I'm kidding. Some of us still use inches, but only for very specific reasons. I created this channel because my ADHD prevents me from not learning new skills like blacksmithing and editing and creating YouTube videos, which is probably the harder of the two to learn, but they do go very well hand in hand together. And I saw this as the perfect opportunity because I've always loved being able to share knowledge with people, and I wanted to take this as a way to prove to myself that I'm not just some stupid idiot from New Zealand, because trust me, there are a lot of us. But I also wanted to take this as an opportunity to help grow my confidence, not only on camera, but also in the day-to-day grind. I've realized at this stage of my life that if I'm not pushing myself and pushing my boundaries to the very limits, and not pushing myself out there for the world to see, hey guys, then I'm not pushing hard enough. Pushing to be a better man, and pushing to get closer to God. And trust me when I say that my life has a lot of headwinds. You know those days when you just feel like the world's on your shoulders and you feel like you can't even take one single step forward? I know for a fact that a lot of you have been in that situation, and a lot of you are in that situation now. All I can say is, and it's kind of big for me to say this on camera for the world to see, but the moment that I reached out to Jesus was the moment that that weight was lifted off my shoulders. And I know for a fact that if I didn't reach out to Jesus, I wouldn't have gained that confidence to be sitting in front of a camera and teaching you guys today. So remember, my friend, Christ is King. I went on a bit of a tangent there, didn't I? I hope that answers a few questions that you had about who I am and the purpose of my channel. But getting back on track, let's get back to redressing our punching tools. I'm going to demonstrate this with this old hole punch that I forged a while back, along with my belt sander, which is an ideal tool to use for this operation. Ideally, you want to use the finest grit you've got. 260 is a pretty good grit because it's nice and fine, and hopefully your tools aren't that beaten up. I am substituting my 260 grit belt for a 160 today for demonstration purposes because, as you would have seen in my previous video, I snapped my last one. This is a little bit rusty, but it is in good condition, so I'm just gonna beat it up real quick for demonstration purposes. Yeah, I can feel a bit of a burr on there. Not too bad because I forged this so well. I guess you should watch my previous series where I forge, harden and temper a hole punch. I do apologize for the poor lighting. Like I said, I am getting some more lighting on the way. So now I'll just show you how easy it is to reshape the end of a damaged punch with your belt sander, if you've got one. You can do it with a file or other tools, but we're going to use a belt sander. As you can see, I like to go back and forth between sanding the flat face of the punch and then rotating the punch to sand the sides. And every now and then you might make it a little bit oval, but you can just easily sand that out until it's round. Then go back and forth, make sure it's nice and sharp, and you're done. It is nice and sharp again. I did actually make it a little bit oval at one point because I'm using such a harsh grit for this demonstration, but that was easy enough to just reshape it up into a circle. And it's as simple as that. I hope this video has helped you in some way, and if it has, don't forget to hit that like button. And if you want to catch my next video where I'll teach you how to forge a traditional bottle opener with all the tools that we made in my beginner blacksmithing tool series, then don't forget to subscribe. You don't want to miss it. But until then, see you next time, and have a good night.
It's giving up defending herself. Oh, God.
Resurface your aim. Birds. So in today's video,